Thank you very much, everybody. This is a case where if they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. And these are bad people. These are, in many cases, I believe, sick people.
That was Donald Trump's first public address since being found guilty of 34 felonies, at least the first that he had sort of set up. It wasn't an impromptu press conference or whatever outside of the courtroom. He had a day to prepare what he was gonna say. And normally we cut right into like the interesting part of public addresses, but the reason we started like that is that's what it actually looked like in practice. History was made yesterday. Donald Trump was found guilty of literally dozens of felonies. He had a day to put forward what his new approach was going to be. How do you present yourself to the nation? And he came out like that, looking tired, looking defeated, and he talked about them being bad people. But as soon as that clip ended, do you know what he started talking about? Migrants crossing the border and how your taxes are gonna go up and how they're gonna make it so you can't buy cars. He said the word bad people, and then that seemed to act as like a squirrel moment. He just started talking about other bad people, I guess Biden and the Democrats. He couldn't even stay on topic with the fact that he is now a convicted felon. Now, that's not to say that there's no good news for Donald Trump floating around. Wait until you hear how much money he raised since those verdicts came down. But when he eventually remembered the point of the speech, he got back around to the verdicts, and then it looked like this.
We just went through one of many experiences where we had a conflicted judge, highly conflicted. There's never been a more conflicted judge. Now I'm under a gag order, which nobody's ever been under. No presidential candidate's ever been under a gag order before. I'm under a gag order, nasty gag order, where I've had to pay thousands of dollars in penalties and fines and was threatened with jail. Think of it, I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading Biden by a lot, and I'm leading the Republicans to the point where that's over. So I'm the leading person for president, and I'm under a gag order by a man that can't put two sentences together, given by a court, and they are in total conjunction with the White House and the DOJ, just so you understand. This is all done by Biden and his people.
It's just not. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden. Again, he's just confusing things in his mind. He talks about the judge being conflicted. He goes on to say that I'd love to tell you how he's conflicted, but there's a gag order, which doesn't stop him from talking about the judge. It's just utter nonsense. But again, that's the best he has. Now I want to get into the discussion, but he hits a couple of weird points, and we're not going to play the full tape for you. A lot of it's what you've heard before, but there are a few weird moments. So let's do a quick run through of those, and then we'll discuss.
As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil. He looks so nice and soft. People say, oh, he seems like such a nice man. No, unless you saw him in action. In other words, you could go into every single thing that I ever did. Was he a bad boy here? Was he a bad boy there? And nothing ever happened. There was no anything. Nothing ever happened. This was a highly qualified lawyer. Now, I'm not allowed to use his name because of the gag order. But you know, he's a sleazebag. Everybody knows that.
I think that might be a violation of the gag order, calling him a sleazebag. Look, so Cenk, I disagree with much of what he said in those clips and throughout that address, but I will agree that, look, he's treated rough a lot of the time. When they started literally crucifying his witnesses, I thought it was a step too far.
Yeah.
I don't like to see that in the modern era. What do you think?
I mean, when they brought out the nails and the giant cross, I thought it was a bit much on the theatrics, right? Literally crucified? Probably not. I like what you said, John, about a squirrel moment. He has a lot of those. But nevertheless, I think that press conference helped him. So I'll explain why in a minute. Pausing here to deliver some honest truth as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you. But first, at the heart of the matter here, if they do it to me, they could do it to anyone. Well, okay, it depends on what you mean by it. So if you mean if you sleep with a porn star right after your wife has a kid, and then you run for president, and then you pay her a hush money of $130,000 through your lawyer, and you falsify your business records, then they can come after you too. Well, yeah, that's true. If you are a lifelong criminal who's mainly been a con man his whole life, and you've done a series of ridiculous crimes while being an ex-president, they can come after you too. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, but look, guys, I assume that to be fair, I assume what he means by it is do a political persecution, not just the prosecution for, oh, golly gee, I just happened to see a crime here. So has there been a history in this country of doing persecutions of outsiders who are against the interests of the establishment? Yes. Have 95% of those been on the left? Yes. So in fact, I just say 5%, but other than Trump, the Republicans have done it to themselves sometimes. Did it to Madison Cawthorn. So look, guys, it's not a thing that doesn't happen, right? And the manner in which it happens is really important. So they don't invent things. They don't go, okay, Madison Cawthorn, let's say he did meth, right? No, they let's say it was drunk driving. Okay, no, they dig to try to find some dirt on them. And if you dig on anyone, you'll probably find something, right? But it depends on what they find. So Madison Cawthorn is a terrible right winger, can't stand him, got no love for him, not even 1%, okay? Having said that, they dug up photos of him being drunk and dressed as a girl, but with like hanging out with women and stuff. Who cares? Oh, you got him on sex and drinking alcohol, right? So it was obvious that they were trying to target him because he said bad things about other Republicans. I could argue, and I have argued, that that's somewhat true in Matt Gaetz. He actually appears to have done something terrible, but they let it go, the authorities did, and then the Republicans brought it back in an ethics committee after he challenged Kevin McCarthy. And to me, the most legendary example of this is Eliot Spitzer, who was the sheriff of Wall Street. He was holding the banks accountable. The banks targeted him, and they bragged about it later in a movie. And they said, yeah, he was preventing us from having more profits. They didn't add the part that is definitely true by ripping off an average American. So we decided to eliminate him, and we dug, and it turns out, he was using a prostitute. That's it, and he got eliminated. So did they do that to Donald Trump? First of all, with Donald Trump, you don't have to dig. You just have to scratch the surface. Like the scratch offs you get at 7-Eleven, you just need one scratch. Okay, and then boom, all these crimes come bursting out because this moron commits crime after crime after crime. But to be fair to him, I call him a moron, but he's gotten away with it his whole life. He's 77 years old. He's committed dozens of crimes. We've shown it to you in different episodes. It's overwhelming. The evidence is overwhelming in each case. Look, here's a former president. The 12 people on a jury all agreed. It's so hard to have it be unanimous. And they were like, oh yeah, there's no question he did it. I mean, we sat through the trial, you falsified the business records, etc. And people say, oh, well, this is one of his smaller crimes. It's an outrage. The fact that he has bigger crimes is positive for him. How? Like, yeah, it's true, you're right. Committing a coup is a larger crime. Stealing the top secret national documents and not giving them back to the FBI after they asked you for them is a bigger crime. You're right about that. It's not that this isn't a crime. So, look, the reality is the establishment, and this is what MAGA just doesn't understand. The establishment does not want any of their own prosecuted. That's why they almost always go after left wingers, because the progressives are not really part of the establishment, right? Eliot Spitzer went a little too far as a progressive when he was governor, and he still was doing things that were going after Wall Street, and they're like, no, that crosses a line. And I can give you many other examples. But in this case, they protected, Merrick Garland and the other prosecutors protected Trump for 2.5 long years under Biden. And I know because I was on this program, and if you've been watching, you saw me going, why won't Alvin Bragg prosecute? He's such a coward. Merrick Garland's a coward. I said it so many times because they're just sitting on their hands. Why? They love protecting the elites, no matter how many crimes they commit. And so if you're MAGA, you're a Republican, say, oh, Democrats committed crimes too. Of course, but guys, you have to get them on the actual crimes. You can't say what MAGA is saying today. Oh, who cares, man? We're just gonna imprison a bunch of Democrats. Come on, man. You're saying that you don't give a goddamn about the rule of law. You have to care about the rule of law and then ask for it to be fairly applied.
Yep.
So in this case, was it actually fairly applied? I would argue that it was unfair that they didn't apply it to him earlier. But if you're saying, hey, the timing was a little political, I actually agree with you. And that a lot of Democrats will get furious with me for saying that. But you're getting it backwards. It's not that they were like, oh, we gotta go get him right away because we're gonna do a political witch hunt. And they're like, no, don't. Don't prosecute him for obvious crimes we all know he committed, because then, oh, what if Republicans then come after the corrupt Democrats? Ooh, right? So, but when they realize he's definitely running and was probably gonna win 2.5 years into Biden's administration, they're like, oh yeah, we meant to prosecute. So there is, in my opinion, there is a political element to it, but it's surprisingly the political element that was actually protecting Donald Trump for so long. So this is justice finally arriving very, very late.
I kind of agree with what you're saying, Cenk. I don't agree that it's justice finally arriving. As a black man in America, and I see people celebrating it, and I was on Twitter making jokes about it. But in actuality, there's nothing really funny about what we call justice for white men. And I don't think you're wrong, Cenk, when you call him a moron, even though he did get away with crimes for 77 years almost. But because in America, you don't need to be smart if you're a white man to get away with crimes. The system is set up that way. Look at the history of this country, people who actually murdered black boys, i.e. Emmett Till, people who actually put in the paper they were gonna hang black men regularly on Saturdays in their Sunday best and bring their kids. So I think the country is set up so that white men get away with crimes. Here's what I would say. As a black man who understand that America has set up a system that gives 1 in 3 black men that are my age felony convictions and do not allow them to walk out around and talk trash about the judge and their family members and also the witnesses. It is actually a stab in the back for people to call this justice to me. I feel like, when a black person, specifically a black man in this country, gets convicted of felony convictions, 34 of them, they're not gonna walk out of jail. They're not gonna get to continue to run for president. They're probably not even gonna get a job when they actually finally get out of prison at Walmart or anywhere that they apply, because every time they apply, there's gonna be a question about their conviction status. And I think that, to me, makes this not seem like justice. The idea that this man can still be on the ballot for president in this country is absolutely disgusting and dastardly, when I know so many black people are suffering from lesser convictions. Beyond that, I think, to me, the idea to call this political, or to say that, for Trump to be, crying about a political witch hunt or these are bad people. This is a guy who stood on stage in 2016 with Hillary Clinton and said that he was going, if he won, was going to turn his Justice Department on her about emails. So I feel no remorse or even sorrow for the fact that Donald Trump is worrying about the politics of what his crimes have, or where his crimes have brought him. This is where he should be, and probably 12 steps past this, considering that he has made a mockery not just of America's justice system, but America democracy and the Constitution itself. So him crying about the failures of this and Republicans joining in with it is absolutely disgusting to me, for sure.